Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, and he's about to make his sweet comeback this 2024 NFL season. So today we're going to look at how Burrow's going to do just that. But before we break down how, why is this a comeback to begin with? In the first game of the season, Burrow was facing the Browns, who had one of the best underrated defenses in the NFL. With new talent surrounding Myles Garrett on the defensive line for the Browns, it was obvious this would not be easy for the Bengals offensive line and Burrow, and the struggle really showed. Myles Garrett whooped the Bengals offensive line, and Joe Burrow, while he didn't have a catastrophic game, he only completed 14 of 31 passing attempts, a 45.2 completion percentage. That's terrible. And using PFS adjusted completion percentage, it was 60.7%, which is still bad. But hey, it's just the first game. And in previous years, Joe Burrow and the Bengals have always had a slow start to the season, kicking the rust off before they find a groove and truly start cooking. However, in only the second game of the season, Burrow would re-injure his right calf against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, he still played through it that game and continued to play each game there onward, but it was pretty clear that re-aggravating that injury was hampering Joe Burrow and his ability to play. And not just the stats, but PFS play-by-play grades also showed him not living up to where he was in previous seasons and playing poorly. Not only that, but Zach Taylor had to revamp the entire offense to a short, quick passing game to accommodate Burrow's lack of ability to throw deep because his calf was holding him back. This went on until the Week 7 bye for the Bengals when they played the 49ers in Week 8, who would later play in the Super Bowl that year. This game was the turning point. Joe Burrow would rip apart the 49ers defense, who had no answers for Burrow and his elite receivers. Burrow would throw for 3 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, and no interceptions. This continued against the Buffalo Bills, where Burrow lit up the Bills secondary with a whopping 4 big-time throws and 348 yards in the air. Cool, so Joe and his Bengals are back on track, finding their groove, and on the way to the playoffs to fight their way through and win a Super Bowl. Wrong. Only 2 games later, against, ironically, the Baltimore Ravens again, Burrow would suffer a very rare injury in the NFL and tearing his ligament in his wrist on his throwing hand. And unfortunately for this injury, the Bengals had to shut down Burrow for the remainder of the season. Joe Burrow went under surgery for his wrist on November 27th, 2023, and started the grueling rehab journey, which is approximately 4 to 6 months, which the latter would lead to just about before the start of training camp for this 2024 season. Now, we could easily make the case for each top level QB for having an MVP year and how they could make a run at a Super Bowl. But a lot of people, including myself, felt this could and would have been the year for the Bengals to win it all. So we know why this would be labeled a comeback to begin with, and we recall what was becoming a season to remember before Burrow got hurt. Now, how is Joe Burrow going to orchestrate this primed hype train comeback? Well, immediately our thoughts go to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 number 1 wide receivers. And while that is part of how Burrow's going to get his sweet comeback and the most obvious factor, there is an even more critical part to his comeback that has been plaguing Joe Burrow since the start of his NFL career. One that, despite the Bengals' reasonable effort, has not gotten better up until this year. And as one thing was better in the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow would have already have a ring. The Bengals' offensive line has been rejuvenated and it's ready to bounce back. In addition, Joe Burrow has a new secret shiny weapon that's going to amplify this sweet comeback. But first, we have to look at what's going to fuel Burrow's legendary run. Now, there wasn't an overhaul of the offensive line, but there are some important factors and why they will be much better this season. The first is looking at the possible breakout of Cordell Volson at right guard. The Bengals drafted Volson in the 4th round in the 2022 draft, and the first 2 years of his career has been pretty rough. But in Week 12 last year, Volson started to turn things around, having a few notable great games. This leads me to believe he's primed for a breakout season, given what he was showing at the end of the last season around Week 12. Because an offensive line usually takes a few years to fully develop. So it's not out of the ordinary to see a lineman break out in that year 3-4 range, especially since he showed that at the end of the last season. The next reason for optimism is the addition of Trent Brown, who is a really good tackle and has been for years for Tom Brady. Trent had a pretty good season last year, with some bad games in between, but that's partly because the Patriots have been so volatile for the past few years, with the offense being such a train wreck. So being somewhere much more stable and frankly a better environment, he will play better automatically. Another automatic thing to immediately have Brown play better is he is slated to be the right tackle, since Orlando Brown can't handle being a right tackle even though he has already been paid. This will be an easier job as most teams' best pass rushers are set to play against left tackles. He is on the older side, so there is that concern of how he might hold up, so the Bengals went ahead and drafted Amarius Mims in the first round this past 2024 draft. Mims has so much potential to be an elite pass blocking tackle, and I feel that if he has to come in for a few games for either side, he will hold up even as a rookie. Mims was a highly regarded tackle prospect because he had the best pressure rate in the draft class, which had some already great tackle prospects. Now to look back at Orlando Brown. Orlando's a really good left tackle. He had a down year this past year, but coming from a different system, he was likely adjusting and learning to play in a more difficult scheme. Which is why I want to take a minute to say why this is so vital in the offensive line being rejuvenated and how it correlates to Joe Burrow having his sweet comeback. And it's because Joe Burrow is going to have more time to make plays, which I know it sounds obvious, and it is. But for Burrow, what he does as a quarterback is to take a longer time to get the ball out on purpose. Most QBs will try to get the ball out as soon as possible, even under pressure. But Burrow will wait a little longer because even the coverage is tight, eventually Chase or Higgins will get some separation, and that 1 or 2 plays a game will make the difference between winning the game and possibly advancing to the next round of the playoffs. He does this especially when it's third down because he knows that they are going to punt anyway. And he says it here in this interview.
You were sacked, 7 times in the Super Bowl?
Something like that. Well, here's the thing about sacks. So there's good sacks and bad sacks, right?
Sure.
You look at the stats. Yeah, I got sacked a lot, but you look at when they happen. Third down sacks. Who cares about third down sacks? I'm going to try to extend the play as long as I can on third down to get the first down. Unless I'm in field goal range and it's going to back me up, then I'll throw the ball away and get some points. But I think sacks are an overblown stat.
Yeah. So do you have a good relationship with the O-line? You love those guys?
Awesome, yeah.
What were their Christmas gifts this year? They just gave you 7 sacks in the Super Bowl here? Did you take them back?
Absolutely not. No,
Okay.
they played awesome.
If Burrow deliberately wanting to hold on to the ball, he's clearly going to take more sacks. It's just what's going to happen. But this creates even more importance on the offensive line because the more time he has, the more plays he's going to make with those weapons he has. And the biggest thing is he won't be taking as many hits, which has been a concern with Burrow and his recent injuries. Another crucial point to add is Zach Taylor's offense is in theory harder on offensive linemen. You see, Taylor's scheme is a derivative of the Sean McVay scheme. Some might believe that means the offensive line is being benefited because McVay worked under Kyle Shanahan, and Shanahan's scheme is known to help protect the O-line even if some players are bad, which is wrong for McVay's scheme. McVay's scheme is actually harder on offensive linemen. Well, a better way to put it is that how well the offense performs is much more dependent on the offensive line than in other systems. But I said all that because it's important to remember Taylor's scheme is more like McVay's, and so Bengals' offensive line getting stronger is going to make this offense that much better. And to send Burrow's sweet comeback hype from dreams to real life and more, we have the absolute superstars at the receiving position for the Bengals. But first, remember when I said earlier the Bengals had a secret superstar in the running? To you, it's probably a nobody, but in reality, he could shatter NFL defenses and maybe be the next Antonio Brown, good or bad. Let me present you Jermaine Burton, Joe Burrow's new shiny weapon. Now, the reason some of you probably have never heard of Burton and wonder why he's getting any buzz to begin with is because he has some off-field concerns. But for Joe Burrow's sake, we will pretend that he's not going to do anything bad and get suspended. Burton didn't have crazy numbers in college, but his talent is that of a #1 wide receiver. Not just raw talent either. His route running is crisp, and he can do quite literally everything needed at that wide receiver position and do it at a high level. If he didn't have off-field issues, he would likely be the 4th wide receiver picked in the first round this year and be put in that group of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. And I really hope he can turn that narrative around because he has that much potential. So that's the Bengals' new secret weapon. The already known ones is Jamar Chase, who is healthy, ready to get paid, and is wanting to be put into that top 10 wide receiver conversation. With Chase, it's that special connection he has with Joe Burrow, going back to the LSU days, that makes him such a deadly threat. You've seen other elite QB wide receiver duels in the past, but Joe Burrow having that previous connection makes it more special. It's what stats, grades, and analytics can't take into account, that unknown human factor that can't be calculated. In addition, they have T. Higgins, who probably won't be around next year. Either way, he's looking to get top of the market pay for number 1 wide receivers. So it is in his best interest to play his best football, stay healthy, and have a great year. Not only for the money, but it seems with Higgins, Burrow, and Jamar, there is a genuine interest in being motivated to win. Another interesting addition that could be a difference is Mike Kwiatkowski. Kwiatkowski? Or say Mike, who is mostly seen as irrelevant. But Mike is an interesting player. He is a tight end in theory, but he can be aligned in the slot and be used as a high-end receiving option. And I say this because the teams he has been on in the past have not utilized him in the best way. And the time that he looked really good, but immediately after he was put back in a closet, so to speak. There is so much good happening with the Bengals offense, which makes me think Burrow will not just come back and look good, but have a sweet comeback. One that'll be talked about as a legendary one. But there is a problem. There is a legendary QB who's looking to get his revenge, and Burrow will be in his way. With time running out, drama and chaos running about, quite literally, the Rodgers revenge tour is here.